Well, James, back for round two. I was going to say back for round two of the Ramble, but it wasn't called the Ramble Ramble On. It wasn't called Ramble On when we started, so we've done a bit.
That is a new iteration. We're evolving as a podcast over time.
Yep, trending up.
Trending up, yes. Ramble On. So we've got our we've got a tag name now, or a title, or whatever the creatives refer to it as. We've got some call signs. Yosemite and Jronc. Yosemite, talk us through that. You were okay with all that?
I was effectively bullied into it. So you had a cool one. Jronc, I think you've been using a lot, or Rondog. I don't know if you know about that, but that's what people call you behind your back. I'm vaguely aware of what people call me behind my back, but none of it's suitable because this is a family show, of course.
Indeed it is, yes.
And I think, when I say bullied into it, I think, actually it's probably not right to say bullying because we're going to be talking about culture. So
indeed,
needled into it. It was really you put forward a few ideas on what my call sign or tagline could be, none of which I thought held me in a good light. And so I just naturally went into a little bit of a spiral about, well, geez, what's meaning of life? Where do I stand? I'm a shy, retiring type. But then, as the leader you are, I guess you came up with a suggestion of Yosemite Sam.
And it was the hat. I think it was the hat.
Yes,
that got me, because I know you like your hats.
I do, and as I'm a sombrero indoors kind of a guy, which I'm wearing now because I thought we were filming this.
It is a good look, and you obviously don't want to take it off because it'll mess up your hair.
That's right. That's right. Very, very Mexican of me. Anyway, Yosemite Sam, you suggested, actually you didn't, you just sent a picture of the cartoon guy, but that made sense. And so I thought we'd just shorten it to Yosemite. So it's now Yosemite and Jronc hosting Ramble On. And Yosemite is a cartoon character that I think, again, it shows our age. Anyone under 40 calls it Yosemite and doesn't really know what it means.
Indeed they do.
They do. But so we've got, now that the marketing is in place, the content was there. Last week I realised I did Ramble On. I think that's really how we got the name.
That landed it, that really did land it.
It did, once we listened to it. So I rambled on, but this week is about you rambling on. And I as a bit of a throwaway, I think last time I said you're the most important man in Armidale.
Throwaway, you say?
I realise it's your mantra, but you're leading the organisation, council organisation, one of the second biggest employer here after the university. So it's a significant employer, but it's also, council is the one that, it's a bit of an invisible hand. We're the ones that maintain the roads that people take for granted. We're the ones that do the footpaths and the parks that, just people use without thinking about who does all the work. And that's, I guess, done well. That's exactly how things should be. And council's also the organisation that, provides the water, the sewer, the rubbish. But then to go a step further, we're the organisation that has to think, 20, 30 years ahead. What does this region need to look like? We need to put the building blocks in place to go forward. We also need to make sure that, the amenities, and I spoke about amenities last time, the amenities at council are sufficient that we attract people to live here. So hence you are one of the most, let's say one of the most important men in Armidale.
Thank you, Mr.
Council probably has had a very poor sort of public perception, either rightly or wrongly deserved, and around a poor culture. And it's a really topical thing, culture in an organisation here in Armidale at the moment, when there's talk about the APVMA and some issues there that we might, probably politically we won't touch on too much. But when you came in 2021, what sort of an organisation did you, I guess, inherit or walk into?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. 2.5 years ago, and that time is in many ways has flown, and in many ways it feels like kind of more like 5 years. But when I joined council in January 2021 off the back of an interview process that had taken place at the end of October 2020, and I was actually appointed by the administrator of the time. Normally the appointment of a general manager is one of the key critical decisions that a council will make, and the council, having been suspended at the time, didn't have that opportunity, so that they came, that 7 of the 11 councillors came back into power in mid-December, and I started in mid-January, and we had a Christmas break in between there. So, part of my function obviously was to get to know that new council and bed them back in for the remaining period through to the election, but also understand what some of the impediments and roadblocks have been to this council being all that it can be over a long period of time. And I think for whatever reason, right or wrong, and I know this probably has upset some people when I've said it in the past, but Armidale Regional Council has not had and its predecessors have not had a very good reputation over a long period of time, and therefore the ability to attract staff and attract funding and attract quality candidates at whatever level, whether it be at council level and or staffing level, has been really difficult. And so, for me, my approach is always, having been in this game for a long time, having sort of nearly 30 years in local government, 20 in senior exec, general manager, CEO type roles, my desire and mantra is always to want to build a high performing culture in any organisation that I go into. And so that was my starting point when I came into the role here. And but I had to understand what some of the challenges might be around that in terms of how I do that, and that became very evident very quickly when I started and I started getting around to talking to some of the staff and understanding what some of their challenges had been and what the flavour of the organisation had been. It was a really downcast, lack of morale. People were really disengaged with the organisation, no alignment back to delivery plans and operational plans, and it had just been some of the feedback. And so I guess one of the things I was really keen to do was probably test that information that I was getting, and so I commissioned a culture audit in about sort of February, March of 2021, and that was designed to really kind of try and get into the underbelly of what the challenges were and what the issues were, and had about sort of 55 to 60% of the staff involved in that. It involved interviews, face-to-face interviews, and then surveys more broadly, and that was a great way of just being able to distill what the issues were. Sanity checked all of that, I should say, with doing some debriefs with the staffing group more broadly. Had about 95% of the staffing group involved in that, just to fact check a lot of that information that appeared in the thing. And that was all. And the key feedback that we were getting, that was stuff that was really bothering people, was a dysfunctional council, an organisation structure that didn't make sense, poor financial situation, just resource challenges that didn't allow for money to be directed where it needed to go, and then essentially a lack of pride in the organisation that they worked for. And there was a lot of distrust between the staff and the executive and the council, and then the council and the community more broadly.
So those problems that you identified, and there's a dysfunctional council, lack of money, organisational structure that didn't make sense, pride, and I'm sure a few others. Did you try and bite off and fix all of them at once? I mean, there's some that you can't because you have, say, the councillor group is foist upon you. But how did you decide what to prioritise? Was that part of this culture audit?
Yeah, well, for me, it was. It's pretty simple. I took a very simple approach. Again, having done this for a little while now. The key to the success of any organisation is a positive culture. If the culture is solid, the foundations of trust exist, people are comfortable to speak their mind and do so in a very constructive way where they're listened to and respectfully dealt with, then that's 80% of the battle. If you've got a good culture, people don't come to work purposely to do a poor job, but if their environment is poor or the surrounds or the resourcing that they're given to do their job is really poor, then people will just go into their shell, they'll take their paycheck each week, and the good people will leave and find a job somewhere else. So really honing in and focusing in on developing a culture that created pride, addressed the issues, the systemic issues that had existed and not been dealt with for a long time, but really just focusing in on trying to create a really happy, engaged, aligned workforce has been the key, and in my experience that's 80% of it. If people actually want to roll out of bed and come to work, by extension they do a fantastic job, and then the rest of it is just resourcing and getting people on the same page and aligning them back to delivery plans and the view and the direction that the council of the day want to take them. But it really is as simple as developing a really good solid culture, a place where people can be happy and engaged. And I often say, whilst we're not operating a holiday camp here, we're not operating a concentration camp either. People have actually got to be able to have that ability to be able to be themselves, put their own influence and direction on where they want to head. And I'm fond of really just enabling where I can in terms of my role, knowing when to lean in, but knowing when to step aside and let the subject matter experts do their thing as well, and that's key critical as well. But so that really positive culture of where people want to be is the key to how we've been able to get to where we've got to.
So you did the culture audit, that gave you a baseline. What are some of the practical steps, if I were working in council, would I have noticed that that you would have undertaken, or to improve the culture?
Well, I think engagement right across the organisation, making sure that everybody across the organisation is getting the same level of information, no matter where they might be, to the extent that you can. Obviously, there's confidential stuff that happens that you can't share with everybody, but making sure that everyone across the organisation is hearing the same message and it's not getting muffled or stifled. A way that we've been doing that since I started was after each council meeting we meet with all of the depot crews in Armidale and Guyra and the Armidale office and Guyra office staff all on the same day, and we give them a debrief about what happened the evening before in the council meeting, how some of the reasons behind those decisions that have been made, some of the events that have occurred over the previous month that they might not be aware of, and then what we see coming up over the next month or so. The level of communication or the way we engage with people can change a little bit because people have varying degrees of interest in that stuff. But just making sure people have got the basic information about what council's doing and where it's headed and why it's doing what it's doing, but more so giving them the ability to, if they want to know more, where they can find that information out. So that the communication's one aspect of that. I think listening to people and doing what you say you're going to do. So there has, again, lots of systemic issues. The structure is one I'm told, the organisation structure is one that I'm told had been a real bone of contention for many staff for a long period of time, certainly since merger in 2016, and even before that in other iterations of councils it had been an issue that needed to be addressed. Salary systems, again, had been and their relativity had been a long-standing issue. So really getting in and understanding what those key issues are that people are bothering people, and then seeking to address those, but doing it in a really collegiate way and taking people on that journey, and then resourcing teams up as well and creating that ability where we've got gaps in capability and capacity, investing in people and giving them the tools and the resources they need to do their job, rather than just asking them to work harder and longer hours, with no resource utilisation to go with that. It's all of those sorts of things are just how you build that trust, that foundation of trust across the organisation, and help people get to where they need to be.
Yeah, doing what you say you're going to do is key, isn't it? Because it creates moments of truth, and if you miss that, then your trust reliability gets called into question. So some of the actions that you did were, I guess, around the management and structural, call it the structure, the restructure of the staffing group, compensation systems, but then some must also have been for the individuals to shift their mindset, and that'll take a while. So how did you get the mindset shift to improve culture?
Yeah, and everyone comes on that journey a little bit differently. And I think by and large what I found with Armidale Regional Council was people were, the majority of the workforce were crying out for some leadership, essentially. Whatever that looked like, they wanted some leadership across the organisation because they felt for whatever reason that had been missing. And that leadership just in terms of, again, taking ownership, supporting the staff, building that capability and capacity, training, investing in the workforce, but also giving them a clear mandate of what their role was. So again, working with the previous council and now the new council to make sure the operation plan and the delivery plan are solid, and resourced appropriately, and that people know what the next month, 2 months, 6 months, 12 months looks like for them. So giving them that sense of security, because there was a lack of security, I think, in terms of how council had been operating. And realistically, the work that we're doing now is what should have happened when the two council entities were merged back in 2016. That was the ideal opportunity to invest in bringing two workforces together and creating a culture of one council, as opposed to sort of what I had to pick up a couple of years ago, which is two groups that have just probably grown further apart rather than closer. So bringing those merged entities together was a bit of a challenge as well. But I think we're well and truly on a good pathway, and I think it's been key critical. And the staff have got right behind me to do that. People have willingly come on the journey. Those that haven't, there's been some discussions with that, and I don't expect that everybody will want to come on this journey. And the conversations are often quite honest and frank, and it simply is look, this is where we're headed, this is our culture, here are what the expectations are, here's what organisation fit looks like, but absolutely appreciate that this may not be for you, and if it's not, we can find another part of the organisation where you might be more comfortable, and if that's not an option for you, then we can work with you to find another organisation where you can work where you might feel more comfortable, but we don't want to drag anybody on the journey that doesn't want to be on it, because ultimately that's how we get and we've got that great buy-in from a fantastic staffing group that really work rowing in the same direction now. So
given you received the baseline audit back in 2021, have you done a review since to see if there's been a measurable improvement in the culture?
Yeah, well, the strategy map, or the document that we adopted, or the approach we adopted, was really about a turnaround strategy, and that was sort of going to be for an 18 month to 2 year period. And we've actually got a World Cafe coming up in a couple of weeks' time.
What does a World Cafe mean?
World Cafe is essentially where all of the staff will come together as a group and we'll reassess our values, our behaviours, our strategic priorities. We'll do that with the council as well. The councillors have been invited to be part of that. And it's really about, essentially setting those strategic priorities and looking at where we've been, the success that we've had, the challenges that we've still got in front of us, and setting setting some benchmarks and some aspirations for the next sort of 12 to 18 months to continue this journey that we're on. So that the first iteration of this that started in October 2021 was a turnaround strategy essentially, and I think that we've been able to turn that ship around and now get it heading in the right direction. The things like the structure, the focusing on culture, getting recruiting for organisation fit, and all of those sorts of things have been really some key outcomes of that, building that pride across the organisation, having the community understand what it is that we do and where the money gets spent. I think they're all some of the key objectives that we've been able to achieve. But I think just moving forward, it's now what the next year to 2 years looks like and get that. So the World Cafe exercise will be part of that. And we've had a big changeover in staff since the first one was done too. So really to make it more relevant for the new council as well as the staff, the new staffing group and the existing staff, it'll be a key exercise that'll just drive that process forward.
So that the community don't think that it's all internal and navel gazing, which I'm sure they wouldn't. But what can the community expect the outputs from this cultural change to be? How will their lives be different?
I think, ultimately what the community will see, and I think what they are seeing, is an organisation that is much better aligned, understands what its imperatives and its strategic direction is, understands the bits and pieces that staff will deliver on a day-to-day basis that will inform that longer-term strategic direction, and then the rollout of that. So I think, often we'll do our best work when people don't actually see us, and if they don't see us and we're not causing anybody any headache or any havoc, then that's when we know that we're doing our best work, because our roads are getting resealed and our water and sewer is being maintained to the level that it requires, and I mean, it's a difficult question to culture is a really hard thing to sort of try and define in terms. It's probably better defined if you think about what you won't see if you've got a good culture, and the things that you won't see are massive levels of absenteeism. You won't see works programs being missed because people are not turning up to work. You won't see really poor projects.
So we don't see projects blowing out.
So you won't see that because people are really engaged and aligned, and you won't see projects falling over because people just really don't care what the outcome will be. So building those levels of pride, people coming to work, people wanting to be engaged, people not thinking this is all too much for them and going on stress leave, for instance, which is a huge cost to the organisation. They're all the almost like the subterfuge or the benefits of that people wouldn't necessarily readily see, but you'd see at longer terms in terms of how we deliver projects and that level of engagement and happiness right across the organisation.
Excellent. One of the things that when I ran for council, people said they'd like is a frictionless council, one that doesn't throw up barriers. We're a council that enables. So I guess we've got to take a bit of a growth mindset and default to yes, not no, yes, as long as it's within the rules. Is that something that the culture piece can shift, or where would that fit?
Are you talking elected councillors here, or just council as a...
The council as an organisation.
I think that is a big part of it, and I think one of the key benefits of this journey that we've been on, and particularly since the election of the new council, is that the new council have come on that culture change journey as well, and I know that there's that maybe this year council may or may not be involved, and I'm still really hopeful that we can get the councillors involved in that broader journey, because I think that if they at least understand the journey that we're on as an organisation more broadly, I think that and the World Cafe, again, which councillors have been invited to, will be a big part of just looking at that journey and seeing it. But I think a really solid culture, is a big thing that people will see about reducing that level of friction. I remember when I had my interview, that, as I mentioned earlier, administrator, acting general manager of the day, and a couple of community members were on the panel, and they'd grilled me for a couple of hours, and then they said to me, right, have you got any questions for us? And my question to each of the panel members was, what does great look like for you? And a couple of them went around, and one of the community members said to me, Armidale Regional Council and great looks like this for me. Sack everybody on the staff, sack every staff member and replace it with a recorded message that just simply says no. And I burst out laughing. I had a bit of a chuckle about that, but he was actually really serious about that. And so, again, as extreme as that view is, and obviously I'm guessing that this person had some interaction with the planning department of the day and it didn't quite go the way they wanted, so there it went. But there are people that's their experience, and so I think creating an environment where we welcome people through the door, there's no wrong door, they come in, they can get to wherever they need to be in the organisation with with whomever they are speaking to. They can get resolution. We respond in good time to those sorts of things, and I know that is a challenge for us sometimes. We don't always respond as well as we can. We don't always tell the community what we're doing, but the better we can communicate and the better levels of service we can provide our community, I think, the better that relationship will be. And I really, again, whilst we're not perfect, and I'll never claim to be, and we probably never will be, perfection's something that we'll never, ever achieve because we're human. But I think the better that we can get and the benchmarks that we set to get ourselves to where we need to be, the better the experience for the customer. And I think people do genuinely recognise that we're having a go and we're much, much better than we used to be.
Excellent. I think that's important too. To there is history, and history's real. It happened, and people will have their stories. But it would be great if the community can view council, look at what we're doing, look at what you and your team are doing, just with fresh eyes. So there's pre-2021 and post-2021. I don't even think post-2022 is where things should be. Just think about this new council, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and not to come in with preconceived ideas. And if council's being open and transparent, it'd be good if the community is as well. Don't if something's bugging you, come and ask council in a really respectful manner, and you'll get a respectful and well thought out response.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I judge that when I first started, I had a lot of people coming to see me, as I'm sure you did when you were first elected as mayor. People, come out of the woodwork and want to tell you their story about the previous iterations of the council and the really poor experiences that they've had. But that, I think, as you resolve those or give people that platform to be able to talk about it, but more importantly, talk about the direction you're headed and what they can expect moving forward. I can't change the past, nor can you, and nor can any of us. But what we can do is shape the future. And I think that's really what we're trying to do here. And everybody that gives us any feedback, and we always would want it to be constructive, but anybody that gives us any feedback, we always take that on board. We throw it into the melting pot and we work out how we might be able to, weave that into our communications and engagement strategies, for instance, or how we might write our council reports. We will always try and improve and do what we can, but we will never be perfect simply because we're human. But we'll strive for that, and I had my performance review recently, as you know, Mr. Mayor, with you and some of your colleagues, and it went up to council a month or so ago, and I think through that process the panel asked me how I was feeling about where council was at, and I'm absolutely chuffed at where we've got to as an organisation in the short space of time, because, and I often muse about this, if changing the culture of Armidale Regional Council was the only job I had day in, day out, then it would be an easy job it wouldn't be an easy job, but it'd be an easy thing to focus on, because that's all you'd have to worry about. We've had to deal with culture, dysfunctional council, poor financial situations, performance improvement plan that had us, performing really poorly in governance spaces, and planning department that needed an overhaul, all sorts of criticism about council and its ability to deal with the community. So there was probably half a dozen at least things that I could reel off that needed to be addressed, not in isolation, but as part of a bigger picture, as well as addressing a poor culture. But the real focus on the culture has been the key, I think, to addressing all of those other issues, because people are on that journey. And I think it's testimony to how well we're going that we've been able to land a $408 million capital infrastructure project, the single largest project that any local council in New South Wales has ever taken on. We've been able to land that. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, would we have taken it on, if we knew what was involved in it and where we find ourselves now? Because there's just a lot of work in preparing the organisation for that. Probably not. We probably wouldn't have, but we are where we are, and I think at the end of it, it'll grow our capability and our capacity, and it's probably testimony to how I see things. I tend to probably bite off more than I can chew and then chew like crazy, and we're certainly doing that with this project, but I think we'll be better off for it in terms of our ability to attract staff. The culture in and of itself is attracting a really good cohort of applicants now for all of the jobs. We have plentiful applications, but more importantly, we have really quality applications. People who talk about the culture being the thing that is drawing them in, and that they find most engaging, because they can align with our values and our mindset and where we're headed, and they're really chuffed about wanting to be part of that. And there's so many stories across the organisation like that we're hearing, which is really fantastic to hear, and I think bodes well for how we recruit moving forward.
Excellent. Well, James, that's probably a sensible place to pull up stumps for episode 2 of Ramble On. Thanks so much for your insights. What you've managed to achieve is fantastic, and I really look forward to seeing how it unrolls further.
Thanks, Sam, and thank you for your time. And we'll see you in edition 3.
Looking forward to it already. Bye.